Coming in at number 10, he's immune to continuity changes. Barry Allen can run faster than the speed of light, and yet what is arguably his most impressive accomplishment is becoming completely immune to the DC Universe's many continuity changes. As an example of what I mean, in the Flashpoint story, Barry is the only one who remembered the previous version of the DC Universe while in the wildly different timeline that he found himself in. It's not just Barry though. When Wally West, the fastest Flash, re-emerged from the Speed Force in the DC Rebirth era, he was the only one who remembered the pre-New 52 world that the rest of the DCU forgot about. The Speed Force has always enabled the Flashes to do amazing things, and one of the major things it has done is allowed speedsters to step completely outside of time. The ability to be unaffected by continuity changes is an added benefit of that. It makes the Flash and the speedsters the only living authorities within the DCU who know what their universe is supposed to look like. Number 9. Telepathic Immunity. When someone moves their body at a speed so fast that they begin to live in the moments between moments, their minds would also have to move at such astronomical speeds. And the Flash's mind definitely does indeed move that fast. Thank the Lord the Speed Force doesn't just push the physical. Barry Allen's brain's computational enhancements do a lot for him, and I'll be talking about a good number of those things later on. But one thing that having a mind that moves just so insanely fast is that speedsters are all heavily resistant to mind control and mental attacks. If you think about this, it just kinda makes sense. If someone uses their telepathic brain at the normal human speed, any move they try to make against someone like Barry Allen or Wally West would be done at a snail's pace in comparison to their brains that are essentially moving thousands of times faster and seeing things many moves ahead. Coming in at number 8, it's the speed aura. One of the main reasons that a speedster like Barry Allen or Wally West can't exist in the real world is, well, because if anyone moved that fast in real life, it would actually destroy the Earth, but also because there's a thing called friction. When we move fast enough, friction can occur from even just the air. If you are moving as fast as a speedster and you have no speed force or some kind of durability enhancement, then by the time you get where you're going, you probably wouldn't have much in the way of skin or muscles anymore. And that goes double for anyone you may be carrying / trying to save. Well, thanks to the Speed Force, speedsters actually gain an aura that basically negates that whole issue. The aura, which grows the faster Flash is moving, allows in enough air and wind to keep him cool, but it blocks all debris and air friction that could hurt the speedster or anyone he's carrying. He's essentially surrounded by a quote friction cushion of kinetic absorbent energy that protects from the rigorous effects of using such insane speeds. Outside of friction, this also protects from airborne particulate matter, heavy impacts, and even G-force. Number 7. Microsleeps. Remember how I said the Flash basically thinks as fast as he runs? Well, what if I told you he also sleeps as fast as he runs? More than that, what if I told you that he sleeps in the little in-between moments that he is fighting bad guys? Now, of course, when the Flash is facing off against Reverse Flash, other speedsters, the Legion of Doom, or any major threat, the Flash is all hands on deck, red alert, focused. But when he's out there doing the daily superhero grind and battling it out with some random petty criminals, Flash can take it easy and relax a little bit more than other people can, and that is when he has his micro naps. Taking place in the literal picoseconds, which is 1/1,000,000th of a second, the Flash can and does take cat naps that help keep him focused during a fight and well rested at all times. That explains why we never really see them sleeping at all. Number 6. Electromagnetism. One of the more curious aspects of Barry Allen's Speed Force abilities is that it gives him some degree of electrokinesis. He can generate lightning and electrical attacks and discharges, and is actually quite the potent ability, with his lightning being able to travel through water and disrupt magic. But due to his electrical abilities, Barry is also able to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum to some extent. And the biggest example of this is him getting his entire supersuit into his ring. The heat from Barry's lightning creates a thermal expansion that allows Barry's suit to be stored in his ring. Every time he releases his suit from his ring, the pieces of it are conducted by lightning to form the suit around him. He manipulates electromagnetism to mentally control the pieces that form, specifically though, his mask, and can cause the mask to construct over his face and even retract back on his command. So while that is a small example of electromagnetism, knowing that Barry can use his lightning to create electromagnetic fields means that it really only takes one story for the Flash to become a scary fast Magneto. Number 5. Speed Force clothing. So we just talked about how Barry uses electromagnetism to assemble his suit from his ring. Still defies so many things, but his counterpart, Wally West, sometimes he doesn't even have access to his suit for various different reasons. This isn't a problem though, as Wally West Flash can also make his costume directly out of the Speed Force. Now this ability does take some concentration and comes with the risk of the Flash ending up completely naked if he happens to get knocked out or something, but thinking about it, this means that speedsters can basically have the ability to make Speed Force constructs. But beyond just creating a temporary Flash costume, which looked awesome by the way, Wally has used this ability to reweave the molecules of his Kid Flash costume and construct a completely new Flash suit out of pure Speed Force energy. What does that even mean? I don't know. Do you know? Probably not. Number 4. Speed Bank. One very useful trick that both Wally West and Barry Allen have been shown to have is the ability to lend out and take away the Speed Force abilities from others. Basically, these two can act as something of a quote speed bank. That's what someone online called it at least. These two Flashes are so well connected to the Speed Force that they can give or take speed away from others. As with any ability that is much too overpowered, like Speed Force constructs for example, it uses a fair amount of quote concentration, leaving the Flash open to other attacks. But if they want to, the Flash can make anyone a temporary speedster to help in a fight, or he can take away the speed from people or objects, stopping them in their tracks. Or, if you go by the name Impulse, Wally West can freeze you in one pose and leave you in a museum alive but petrified for all times. Sounds scary when you say it like that, doesn't it? Number 3. Speed Reading. Like I said before, those with the Speed Force move their minds, and I guess their eyes, about as fast as their bodies. As a byproduct of that, speedsters can also read entire books front to back in a matter of moments. This can be extremely helpful for superheroes in tight spots where they need information on a certain topic or need to read an instruction manual to help them out in specific situations. For both Barry Allen and Wally West though, they are actually unable to retain the knowledge of what they read at super speed. They read it and then it will stay in their minds for a little while, but after about a day or so, it will be gone. But those two aren't the only speedsters around. Both Bart Allen and the original Flash, Jay Garrick, have both completely mastered this ability. These two speedsters can retain everything they read, and Jay has even bragged that he has read every single science book in the world and can recite them word for word. I kinda believe it. Big old nerd. Number 2. Speed Cloning. This one is something that has been seen before with other fast-moving superheroes. In most iterations of an ability like speed cloning, a character is simply moving so fast that they appear to be in more than one place at the same time. With the Flash though, it's just a tiny bit different. They do move so fast that they appear to be in two places at once, but that's because that's actually another them. The Flash is able to create duplicates of himself by very quickly entering and exiting the time stream, essentially creating versions of himself that are 1 second older or younger than the main one. These clones aren't actually clones, as in they aren't genetically grown beings identical to the host, but rather they are actual moments of the Flash that are just cut out from time and pasted into another moment. When he was Impulse, Bart Allen was the first one to ever do this, and it went really bad, as the hero then watched a time-displaced version of himself completely lose his life, which has to be absolutely terrifying to watch. And finally, in number 1, it's a super metabolism. This one does feel like a bit of a no-brainer, but I find that a speedster's metabolism doesn't actually come up very often, not in stories or anything really. Basically, every speedster has a faster metabolism than an average human, and that just makes sense, but it affects each of them differently. They all heal at a faster rate than normal people, but Barry Allen himself has shown the ability to just focus on an injury and heal it almost instantly. When his arm was completely crushed, it only took minutes for his arm to be completely healed. He was also able to quickly heal from the absolutely insane pressures of being 2,000 feet below the ocean, which dealt extreme damage to his body, and he was fine. Wally West at one point had a weaker connection to the Speed Force, and at that time, Wally would have to eat massive amounts of food just in order to keep his metabolism up and running, which to me sounds like an absolute nightmare. I love food, but could you imagine having to just chow down on a mountain of food, especially if it wasn't good food? Luckily, once he was able to fully connect to the Speed Force, that went away, but it's an interesting thing to note that in order to keep themselves up and running without the Speed Force, speedsters have to be super eaters. The super metabolism also unfortunately means that parties are celebrated sober only, but the Flash is virtually immune to any gases, so like, you win some, you lose some, you know what I mean?
In at 10, running on air. In a display of incredible speed and resourcefulness, Barry Allen, the Flash, once embarked on a remarkable feat during the Silver Age. Jumping out of a plane, he utilized his powers to race across the surfaces of numerous clouds. Employing his understanding of the clouds and their water vapor, using them as temporary support, Barry ingeniously skipped across the clouds, basically defying gravity with the help of his super speed. He was moving so fast this dude ran on clouds. As the fastest man alive, Barry's remarkable agility and speed also granted him alternative options when, terrain is limited. In a remarkable demonstration of his abilities, again, he moved his legs with such extraordinary speed and force that they compressed the air molecules beneath him, making basically just a staircase for him to run up in the air. It's insane. This incredible display showcases the extent of Flash's powers and just the fact that you can give him whatever powers you want just using speed as an explanation, because damn, dude just ran up air. In at 9, voice modulation. While shapeshifters such as Martian Manhunter and Plastic Man are known for their deceptive abilities, the Flash is not typically associated with those powers. But the fastest man alive found a way to utilize his supersonic speed to manipulate his voice, making it as challenging to figure out who he is as it is to outrace him in literally anything. By vibrating his vocal cords at various wavelengths, the Flash can effectively disguise himself and mimic the voices of other individuals. This skill is actually pretty dope, and as far as the show goes, was only used to disguise his voice when he was talking to people that he knew, which is the most logical way a superhero has disguised their voice so far, but like, damn. He was also able to subtly use makeup and this ability to deceive members of the Rogues Gallery, leading them to believe that he was one of their own. In at 8, teleportation. There was this comic called The Human Race, wherein a group of cosmic gamblers who existed at the edge of the universe traveled around the cosmos and made bets with each other for fun. They were ultra mega powerful, so this was their only form of entertainment. They picked up speedsters throughout the cosmos and made them race against each other while placing bets on it like some weird horse race, but the speedsters who lost got their home planets destroyed. Yeah. In one such bet, Earth gets the attention of these cosmic gamblers, and Wally West, the current Flash and the fastest man alive, became the representative for Earth. During a race with the fellow speedsters in the bet, Wally, who realized the cosmic gamblers will never refuse a friendly bet, proposes another one with those gamblers that he will reach Earth before they can. The fact that the cosmic gamblers can teleport made them extremely cocky, so of course they're going to take it, but god damn. Using the kinetic energy of everyone on Earth and then some, Wally ran at what is called the trans-time velocity, fast enough to beat teleportation, which is 23 trillion times faster than the speed of light, which is an unfathomable number. He reasonably should have lost and gotten the whole planet destroyed, but he didn't, so there you go. He can run as fast as teleportation. And at 7, flying. This also isn't even a joke or a technicality. In the Justice League Unlimited episode I Am Legion, Wally West, who was the Flash at the time, faces a situation where he plummets from a jet with no means to halt the fall. Quick on his feet though, or I guess quick on his stomach, Wally comes up with a plan and starts rapidly spinning his arms. The resulting gust of wind becomes so powerful that it not only slows his descent, but allows him to hover in mid-air like a helicopter. However, lacking experience in flight, Wally struggles to actually control this and veers off course until he crash lands on a beach, but the instance demonstrates that the Flash can fly using his powers if he does so effectively. Both Barry and Wally, along with other speedsters harnessing ample Speed Force energy, are able to actually take flight by generating force resembling a helicopter with either their arms or their legs. Once airborne, they can then maneuver their flight trajectory using the same techniques or run atop clouds and other airborne surfaces, as I mentioned earlier. And it's 6, anti-death equation. This is the opposite of the anti-life equation, but I wasn't going to call it the pro-life equation. The anti-life equation stands as a legendary concept coveted within the expansive DC universe. Darkseid, the relentless pursuer, always seeks to unravel this enigmatic formula, whatever the case may be, which has been depicted in various ways by different writers. It has been portrayed as proof that existence is ultimately meaningless, and as an inherent concept within the minds of sentient beings, enabling absolute control and domination. But while the anti-life equation holds immense power, it finds its match with the Speed Force. Barry Allen, as the Flash, possessed the ability to defy the equation's influence through physical contact, demonstrating the extent of these extraordinary capabilities with Iris. In a moment of heroics, Barry used this power to rescue Iris West, who's in this universe the aunt of Wally, not his sister, from the clutches of the equation with a kiss. Yeah, just by kissing her, Barry counters the equation's grip, showcasing that the Speed Force is basically all-powerful. Okay, that's nuts. Halfway through into number 5, life extension. After the events of Flashpoint in the DC animated universe, in a desperate bid to survive after being shot, Eobard Thawne tapped into the powers of the Speed Force, channeling it into his body to prolong his inevitable death. This granted him a brief extension of his life by vibrating his body extremely fast before succumbing to his wounds, allowing him to return to the altered timeline that Barry had created. However, the Speed Force couldn't heal his injury, and Thawne had to be cautious not to exert himself too much as it depleted his borrowed time. Determined to acquire the coveted Get Out of Hell free card, he mercilessly eliminated several members of Dr. Fate's Task Force X. Though he eventually obtained the card, a climactic encounter with Bronze Tiger resulted in the loss of his fingers and the card itself. So in a final confrontation with Deadshot, he gets gravely injured and is riddled with multiple bullets, so his life force fades away and the Speed Force leaves his body. Yeah, I mean, like, he returns to when Thomas Wayne Batman had shot him, so he actually dies, but I mean, he literally extended his life after getting shot in the frickin' brain. Yeah, I'm gonna count that as another power. And for immunity, the Flash's molecular vibration, mostly known for his ability to phase through objects, holds a lesser known but significant ability of granting him near levels of indestructibility. By manipulating the frequency of his molecules, like I just mentioned, the fastest man alive can vibrate at such an intense level that he becomes impervious to disintegration. This remarkable power works as both offensive and defensive means, with Barry being able to demonstrate this skill by vibrating through objects, of course, but also disintegrating objects upon touching them, famously the hand through the chest. But it also just makes him like immune to like acids. So like if like someone was to throw sulfuric acid on him, he can just vibrate and it won't do anything, which is kind of nuts, which just adds an additional layer of invulnerability to speedsters. I don't know, it's pretty dope, but I mean, I don't know how many times he gets sulfuric acid thrown on him, so I don't know how useful it actually is going to be. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, no batteries boyfriend. Okay, I'm sure you can get where this is going, but I'm gonna say it anyway. This was touched on within the show, and there have been jokes made about it throughout the years, but while some say that the fastest man alive wouldn't be able to make a romantic experience good, I'd say that it's actually probably the exact opposite in practice. Hear me out, okay? While yes, to the rest of the world it may seem like it took a second for it to end, but the ability to give others temporary speed or bring them into flash time like we see in the show, that 1 second could be an hour for the couple, okay? Like, the flash time thing is such an insane ability. I mean, like, he was able to do a full episode of the show before a nuclear bomb exploded, okay? It's the ultimate time saver, and it makes it even more romantic because you're literally the only two in the world for that time. And I mean, also, the dude can vibrate, which is why I called this number No Battery's Boyfriend, okay? You think that he's gonna go off in a second? You'll be off just as fast, and then you'll have a kickback like a damn cannon, okay? No wonder he ends up having kids in basically every timeline, and it's like almost always twins. I get it. Penultimately, in at number 2, Eminem. With his quick-witted mind and lightning-fast legs, it's no surprise that the Scarlet Speedster has an equally rapid mouth. And no, I'm not going in the last direction again, I promise. In times of necessity or when overwhelmed by nerves, the Flash can actually unleash a torrent of speech at super speed. And while regular humans and many other heroes can't actually understand what's going on, fellow speedsters and Superman are exceptions and can actually get what he's saying. While this power is rarely showcased, it's often just gibberish to most people. The Flash uses it when he's talking with other speedsters or the Man of Steel, and in the novelization of Kingdom Come, it's revealed that this unique form of communication is the only way that the Kingdom Come Flash can speak, because he's always moving, and Superman is the only person who's remaining that's able to understand it. I think that's pretty cool, and I mean, like, if he wanted to try to do Rap God, he would probably crush Eminem. I want to see that. Next epic rap battle of history, The Flash versus Eminem. Do it. And finally, in at number 1, Creating Gods. God. Going to the CW, okay? From a crisis where every Earth gets destroyed, it's hard to make any other story seem worth it, okay? But the absolutely crazy thing is that following the next season of The Flash, the season 7, they actually upped the stakes by having Barry fight the literal Speed Force, okay? And it was a reborn Speed Force. That's what this number is about. Barry ended up getting the Speed Force killed when Oliver Queen as the Spectre brought out his full potential because, you know, they had to save the multiverse. But after it died, Barry and Iris essentially birthed another one, but at the same time created 3 other forces that were all evil for one time or another, okay? And then the others eventually get onto their side and become good, but then the Speed Force wants to kill them, and then it also looks like it's Barry's mom again, and they start calling her Nora. It's a weird storyline, okay, I will admit, and Barry fighting the thing that gave him his powers doesn't make sense because it could just take him away and then win. But yeah, when you rebirth the thing that gave you powers and you're basically their father, because at one point they call you dad even sarcastically, and it looks like your mom, yeah, but also it's like the 4 primordial forces of the universe, so yeah, you birthed gods.
Number 10, Speed Force Aura. Well, you may know that the Flash can move insanely fast, allowing him to do a wide variety of wacky things. To be honest, what many don't often seem to think about is just how he manages it. After all, traveling at the speeds at which Barry, Wally, or Bart travel at is a sure way to end up on fire in regards to how physics, well, should work. So how come that doesn't happen? It's just imagined away, right? Because it's a comic book? Well, yes and no. While comics don't often address this potential issue, the truth is there is an in-comic reason for how the Flash can manage to go so fast and still stay safe and, you know, not combust. The Speed Force protects those who are connected to it by creating a protective barrier around them. In other words, he's wearing an invisible speed shield at all times, which keeps him safe. You can't see it, but it's there. Number 9, Enhanced Intelligence. Not everything is best treated as a race, and yet for the Flash it's hard to not treat everything that way. This superhero is built for speed from his toes right up to his brain. That's right, not only can he move fast, but he can also think super fast as well, making him quite the intellect and bringing a new meaning to the term fast thinker. Get it? When truly concentrating, his fast-acting brain can be used to almost give him future vision, allowing him to see multiple possibilities and imagine their outcomes in an instant. With a brain that fast, I've always been surprised that he hasn't quit the Force and tried to become an improviser instead. That'd be really useful if you were an improviser, thinking on your feet like that. Although it is obvious in the comics, based on some of the Flash's choices, that this isn't an ability he always utilizes. If it had been, Flashpoint probably never would have happened. Number 8, Speed Borrowing. Wait a minute, Amanda. Borrowing? Don't you mean stealing? And isn't that a villain ability? Well, yes and no. While Godspeed is a villain based solely around the ability to feed off another speedster's speed, the Flash has also revealed this to be a useful ability for the good guys. Wally West has used this ability before, and this ability doesn't have to harm those he borrows from either. Really, what is happening when the Flash absorbs another being's speed is he's simply taking in any kinetic energy that the target has built up, allowing the Flash's own stores to be overcharged and resulting in an even faster Flash momentarily. Let's take some of that speed and use it for this. You can build up more speed later. You're fine. Number 7. Phase through objects. The Flash can move through solid material. His speed abilities allow him to vibrate on a molecular level at a high enough rate and with enough control over his body that he can actually slide his molecules in between the space of other atoms. Atoms themselves are mostly thought to be empty space, and this is the fact that this ability is based on. Flash simply slides his atoms in between another object's atoms, phasing through it. The crazy thing is he can transfer his ability to another object. Barry Allen once used his phasing ability to save an entire plane and all of its passengers from a collision. Pretty impressive. Just phase everything. Phase this whole building. Number 6. Packs a punch. What you might be surprised by is how strong the Flash can be. Well, while moving fast, anyways. The Flash himself is not known for strength, but as physics teaches us, a fast-moving object hitting a slow-moving object can create a huge impact, though often it is the object moving fast that will feel it more. Look at something falling at a high velocity down to Earth. The ground isn't often the one that gets hurt, right? It's the object crashing into it that gets hurt. Or look at cars that have collided with trees. Most often the car is wrapped around an otherwise unchanged tree, especially if the tree is large and thereby more grounded and less likely to move. So running into a wall is usually not advised when it comes to basic physics. Unless you are the Flash, who can move so fast that he can apparently just run through a wall. In the episode Divided We Fall from the Justice League Unlimited animated series, Wally West's Flash shows us just how strong the Speed Force made him when he gained speed running around the world in order to smash into Lex Luthor and Brainiac, who were merged at the time. Smashing into them at top speed caused the deadly duo to separate, and ultimately ended up in them being defeated. Wally West almost phased away in that Speed Force, but people were like, nah, come back, Wally, come on. Number 5. Fly. Sort of. More like fancy falling, really. Barry Allen can move his body and limbs so fast that he can create what are known as speed vortexes. These can be used to help direct and cushion his landing when falling from up high. And Barry can also use these speed vortexes to push objects. It's basically like a directional tornado. If you want to see him use it for fancy falling, feel free to check out The Flash Volume 4 issue 26, where he uses it after bailing out of an airplane. So wait, does this ability make Flash a low-key airbender? That's what I want to know. Like super low-key. We're not talking Aang levels, but pretty fancy still. Number 4. Lightning bolts. Well, you may think that the artists are just looking for something to symbolize the Flash's speed when they draw him with little crackles of electricity or lightning around him. The truth is, they are likely, well, they're just that, an artistic representation of the Speed Force. You're right. That's all there. However, in CW's The Flash, they translate to so much more and actually become another power that the Flash can harness and use. The Flash has been shown using this ability to revive teammates like a defibrillator, or more commonly to attack enemies with, evoking Zeus as he appears to just hurl lightning at those who would oppose him. This power has recently also appeared in the newest Flash volume, so it's no longer just fancy art, now it's a thing. The newer incarnation of Wally, who later got retconned into being Wallace West, a cousin to the original Wally West, appeared to have lightning powers as well. So ha! Now it is a comic book ability. I tricked you. You were tricked. Number 3. Give life meaning. So the anti-life equation was a big part of DC when Darkseid, who had been searching for it, finally got his hands on the formula in the events of Final Crisis. The storyline saw the anti-life equation, which has the ability to basically zap the meaning out of life, broadcast across all of Earth, effectively enslaving everyone on the planet and depressing the heck out of them. What could possibly break this horrid mathematical spell? Why, a kiss from Barry Allen, of course. I'm not kidding. When the anti-life equation has hold over Iris West, Barry comes in and knocks it out of her with a simple, Speed Force fueled kiss. Because the Speed Force is also pure life energy, ergo the opposite of anti-life. Also, the anti-life equation is terrifying. Can we just talk about that? It's basically depression in math form. Why am I not surprised that it's in math form. Math always makes me depressed. Number 2. Time travel. During Flashpoint, we got to see just how powerful the Flash really is. In this story, Barry Allen goes so fast that he successfully goes back in time, in an attempt to save his mother from being killed by the villain Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne. Of course, we don't discover that Barry did this till later, as he wakes up in a completely different timeline where he is depowered as a result and appears to be the only one aware of all that has just changed. Flashpoint also wasn't just the beginning of New 52, but can also be somewhat looked at as the event that was responsible for DC's rebirth as well. Barry Allen's ability to time travel as the Flash is just one of many reasons why the Flash is considered one of the most powerful characters in the DC universe. Real talk. He's the Doctor Who of the DC universe. Number 1. Speed Scouts. Bart Allen's Flash can produce duplicates of himself. That's right. So if you ever wish you could be in multiple places at once, what you could really just be wishing for is just that you were the Flash. These Speed Scouts or duplicates move forwards and backwards through time and are mentally linked to Bart. They are physical manifestations and as such can even interact with objects or people. Once they return, they can report back any findings to the original Bart. The dangerous thing though is because they are so linked to Bart, they can also negatively affect him as well if they are harmed, even sending Bart Allen into a coma when one of his Speed Scouts was destroyed. So as powerful as this ability is, it also comes with some pretty high risks too, which is why you don't see Bart use it that often, though he started using it as impulses. He's been using it for a while. But then he was like, nah, too dangerous. I'm good.
In at number 10, faster than the Flash. For those of you who are unaware, one of Reverse Flash's greatest powers that he leans on when fighting with his nemesis is speed, which seems surprising considering the fact that Barry Allen is arguably still considered the fastest man alive. Due to Thawne creating his own negative version of the Speed Force, it made it possible to tap into powers that most speedsters can't even reach. One of those is superhuman speed, faster than the fastest man alive himself. His ability to move at such great speeds gives him the power of superhuman force as well, meaning a punch to the Flash at Reverse Flash top speed would be devastating. In at number 9, sense alternate realities. In the events that led up to Flashpoint, what seemed at first to be a doppelganger of the Flash turned out to be another version of Barry Allen with the codename Hot Pursuit. The only way we as an audience could have discovered this though was by way of Reverse Flash's power. Reverse Flash has the unique ability of being able to sense whether or not people are from an alternate reality. Sounds a bit pointless, but it actually came in handy. All of the universes in the DCU vibrate at different frequencies, and when New Barry arrived, Reverse Flash could sense this. Eobard knew that Hot Pursuit was from an alternate reality just by feeling that he was vibrating at a different frequency than his own. In at number 8, age alteration. Age alteration, a power that we all wish we could have as we got older, and in the beginning of the Flashpoint series we were able to see this power put on full display. At first Eobard was believed to be gone, but he was actually just disguising himself as a child the whole time. When he realized that the Speed Force is simply made up of time, he could tap into this and use it to his advantage. With this unparalleled knowledge, Eobard could control time and even use it however he pleased. Now he could de-age himself or even steal time from his enemies. In at number 7, the Sonic Snap. In the Flash Rebirth miniseries, Reverse Flash made a comeback in a big way and absolutely terrorized the Flash family while doing it. As we've learned so far, the negative Speed Force comes with all of these different abilities, and some the Flash fam were absolutely not even prepared for. To make matters worse, he got a few pointers from the evil speedster villain Zoom. After being chased by Kid Flash and Max Mercury, Eobard took a moment to stop his assailants in their tracks by simply snapping his fingers. That little snap isn't used often by Reverse Flash, but man, when he did, it knocked the hero into next week. The Sonic Snap is so strong it completely bowls over even the fastest of enemies chasing him. Plus it most likely causes huge ripples in reality itself. In at number 6, change his eye color. This may not be his strongest superpower per se, but Eobard Thawne's ability to change his eye color to red certainly sets him apart from all of the other Flash characters. As a villain, just changing his eyes to that bright red makes everything he says and does that much more menacing. Eobard can do this by concentrating his red lightning and focusing its effects towards his eyes, which gives off that evil look. You gotta admit those red eyes do add a lot to the comic book pages, and even though it's not a physically useful power, it does get the message across that he means business. In at number 5, duplicate himself. We got to see a bit of this superpower on display in the CW's Flash series as well as DC's Legends of Tomorrow.
Too slow, Miss Lance. Far too slow.
This power is also referred to as time remnants or temporal duplicates. Due to his metahuman time travel abilities, it's possible for Eobard to rupture time in such a way that he brings forth copies of himself that have been preserved in the Speed Force. Again, a lot of his power comes by way of him being able to tap into that negative Speed Force, unleashing its true potential. These aren't just your regular duplicates though. Reverse Flash can create doppelgangers that can actually communicate with other people. Scary stuff. In at number 4, break protective auras. Going back to the Flash Rebirth miniseries in issue number 4, we saw the Reverse Flash unleash some more surprising powers. The Speed Force provides this powerful aura of protection that keeps them safe from all of the harsh effects that come with moving that fast. What they weren't expecting though was that a villain would come along and just smash right through that. Because the common Speed Force that the Flash family draws from is positive, that meant that Eobard's negative Speed Force was more than capable of a countermeasure. As he's fighting with Jay Garrick, Jay tried to take off only to have Reverse Flash to come up behind him and push him forwards, breaking through his protective aura and severely burning Jay in the process. In at number 3, erase people from existence. All of the Flash family that operate with the Speed Force have the ability to travel through time, but as we saw with Barry Allen and Flashpoint, they experience time travel with a lot more consequences. Again, this goes back to the differences between positive and negative Speed Force. Just because they experience consequences for time travel doesn't necessarily mean it works the opposite way. Eobard's powers are similar, but allow for much more leeway. His version of time travel introduces much more of a chance to manipulate, even being able to eliminate people from existence with no negative repercussions. In fact, the concept of time and reality will just bend to whatever he did to those timelines, meaning he could erase someone from their reality without anyone ever noticing. In at number 2, Regeneration. The Flash Volume 5 issue number 23 was a shocking testament to how truly powerful Reverse Flash is. At the start of the comic book, Eobard looked to be nothing more than a pile of bones on an examiner's table, but Barry knew it was all a ruse. Even while looking at his enemy's deceased body, he knew that it was just another one of his tricks. Then before the next page, we saw a little spark of life in the eyes of Eobard. By the end of the issue, he had fully regenerated back to his original state and was waiting for Iris West when she got home with Wally. This means that Reverse Flash is able to repair and regenerate entire cells even if he's been dead for a while. Guy's immortal. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, retrocognition. This power also became a pivotal part of the Reverse Flash's arsenal and was put on display in the Flash Volume 5 issue number 19. It was the power of memory, but not in the sense that we think of having a good memory. After lightning struck his cell at Iron Heights, Thawne suddenly could remember his entire life before the Flashpoint, which also included memories of Thomas Wayne killing him. The more shocking part about this power was that these memories had been erased from his mind following Flashpoint, yet still when he broke out of his cell, everything came flooding back and now he was more ready than ever to take his revenge.
Number 10. Playing sports with himself. So the Flash will sometimes use his abilities to entertain others. And well, sometimes that can get a little silly. So in the story The Flash of Two Worlds from 1961, the Flash ends up visiting Earth 2, and he meets the Golden Age Flash. This is after he vibrates his molecules in a way that he has never done before, hence introducing the world to the concept of the multiverse in comics, something that would change everything. That's all legit. What we're here to talk about is how at an orphan's benefit at the start of the story, before he vanishes, he entertains an auditorium full of kids by playing tennis with himself. Now, of course the Flash could do this, but how entertaining for the kids would it be? Wouldn't he be moving too fast to really see? It would be like that race from the boys, just over in a blip. But you're just glad to be there, cause the Flash, hooray. Number 9. The Flash can change his appearance. So this is an ability that the Flash used in the Silver Age, so we're talking about Barry Allen as he is the Silver Age Flash. He used to be able to reshape his molecules cause super speed. And he would even be able to reshape and mold his face like putty, which was a very useful ability, but one that kinda takes him outside his whole speed gimmick. Fastest man alive, also able to move his face. A hero who can look like anyone to infiltrate areas is a much different vibe than someone who's just super fast. Also, that type of ability tends to be more applied to villains, since it is more clandestine, and that can more easily be used for villainy. Superman was also able to do this at one point, but only on a rare occurrence. The Silver Age was like this though. The idea of extended continuity that included everything, so you would have to, branch them all together, well, that was coming and still being developed. So you would have a bunch of one-shot powers that happen once and never again. Number 8. Throwing lightning. So the Flash, Barry Allen, and Wally West initially got their powers by being struck by lightning and covered in chemicals. Take that, Jay Garrick and Hard Water. Lightning has always been a part of the Flash's motif though, down to his very costume. And later, as more and more of the Speed Force was revealed, a lot of it would manifest in a way very similar to lightning, or just as lightning. So it was that Wally 2, Wallace West, the Wally of the New 52 and beyond, when they erased first Wally because Dan Didio hates him, he would be able to harness that energy of the Speed Force and push it out through his hands as lightning. Now, this was a more controversial ability because it's essentially energy powers, and again, that's a bit outside the wheelhouse of being the fastest. I mean, you're already fast and you get to throw energy to boot on top of all of that? That's a lot. For some, it was too much. Also, for some, anything Wallace did was too much. Poor Wally too. He's okay. His introduction to the DC universe was rough. Who greenlit that? But so is a lot of the New 52. Number 7. Fast Talker. The Flash, if he forgets, will talk at the same pace he thinks, which is incredibly fast. In fact, he can talk at a speed so fast he can only be understood by other speedsters. Now, the fast talking is a cute character trait, and it makes sense. But it also raises a very depressing conundrum, the likes of which is explored by songs such as The Ballad of Barry Allen. And that is the Flash okay? The Flash is such a happy, well-adjusted hero, but this ability really makes you think, how slow must everybody else seem to him? How does he stand it without snapping? And how does he form meaningful connections when he could have finished a whole conversation while you're just finishing a sentence? It also feels like he would constantly have to be thinking about this. You would think he would forget this more often. Then you start to think, should he come across as more jittery? Cause even a slight movement from him would come across like a really quick jerk to somebody else. Just us regular slow folks. See, it's opened up a whole other world and it's kinda sad. Number 6. Mimicking voices. Staying on the path of voices, the Flash can vibrate his vocal cords to the point where he can sound like absolutely anybody. Now this would be an extremely useful ability, and it's one that if you extrapolate, yeah, it makes sense I guess. However, why wouldn't he use this all the time? It would be an advantage in so many situations, confuse enemies and allies alike. And that's the thing. It's too good. This ability, like some of the others, is a huge advantage, and also a little more on the villainous side of things. Still, this is an ability I would actually like to see more of, and I'm not averse to a darker Barry. It's just hilarious when Grant Gustin tries to do it. Floppy emo hair. Number 5. Expert Folder. Okay, this is never overtly stated, but think about it. For years, the Flash has kept his costume inside a ring and then shoots it out and changes into it at super speed. This is when he needs it, but how does he get it back inside the ring? Because he does. And this usually joke, oh, he can. But you know what? No. Super folder. Super speed expert folder. They say that the costume is sucked back into the ring by special gas when the ring is opened. Okay, sure, Jan. Just admit it, he folds it super fast where no one can see. He just has a really impractical method of storing it. You're the Flash, you could just keep it anywhere and run and change into it and still be back in time to stop whatever crime is happening. We believe in you. Number 4. Speed Scout Duplicates. So the Flash can create duplicates of himself that he can send forward and back in time. Sometimes they're duplicates, sometimes they're versions of himself from a few seconds or minutes in the past or future. Either way, it gets weird if you think about it too hard. Communicating with yourself a minute or two from now and then telling yourself what to do, it just seems disconcerting. And how do the timeline effects ripple out? Is this how the universe ends? Barry telling his past self to remember to buy milk so he can have cereal when he gets home? Barry would totally have cereal for dinner. You know it. When you start dealing with time travel and Barry, it can get messy, especially since he doesn't need his fancy treadmill anymore. I miss the cosmic exercise equipment. It still pops up here and there, but they take it far too seriously. Number 3. One Punch. So the Flash can use his speed and the Speed Force to amplify a bunch of abilities. So he can also channel this speed and energy into one meta powered punch. A dangerous, potentially life-ending blow that is supposedly guaranteed to end most average villains. Not kill them, just end the fight. Even if they are metas themselves. Sometimes people call this the ultimate punch. And well, it's very much maybe a one-hit KO type deal, or we need the big guns kind of deal, so it doesn't happen too often. But when it does, it raises the question, so can't he just channel the energy into himself and be all around stronger, kinda on average? See, sometimes a less than stellar power makes you question the character's other abilities. Also, the fact that the Flash isn't the strongest is part of what makes him interesting, because he needs to find other solutions for his extremely strong foes. Number 2. Constructs. Now when you hear the word constructs, your mind may go, oh, Green Lantern. But no, by using the Speed Force, the Flash too can create solid constructs and objects. Objects he can then use. How does he do this? Well, fans are still arguing about it, bandying about terms like speed and light. And if we got them at the right vibrational speed, sure, it could be solid. While others say, why could he be able to do that? That's too much power. Now the Flash phasing through things, legit, but then turning around and making things solid, is it supposed to be because they were intangible? And vibrating them into phase? Maybe. I mean, I guess if we don't get too deep, which is fine. Nobody should be learning their science from the comic book universe. And if media can still tell the world that you only use part of the percentage of your brain, then the Flash can make things solid. That's the deal. Because that's not true. Number 1, Strength Force. This gem comes to us from the Rebirth era of the Flash and introduces us to the concept of the Strength Force. So in the Flash number 53, the Flash is infused with the Strength Force. And then we got to experience really jacked up Hulkberry in 54. And yeah, it definitely is an experience. There's a bunch of monologuing about how different the Strength Force is. It's different than the Speed Force, it's heavier. He also uses it to talk about how he can't just think his way out of every situation, despite how fast he's able to think. The Strength Force is ludicrous, and they try to make more of it than just roids, because Barry is all, it's more than just muscles, I can control gravity, because he's so dense. Thankfully, this is very short-lived, and he shrinks back down to regular Barry Allen. But the Strength Force was definitely deserving of our number 1, because it makes you question everything.
Number 10, Wally West, Super 7. Wally West of the Super 7 isn't necessarily darker in terms of actions, it's more so what happens to him in this universe. Don't know what the Super 7 is? Well, it's a team made up of the remaining Justice League members after the League was disbanded because of an evil alien bandit invasion. At first they were able to hold the invaders off, but when the alien leader Grendel issued a decree that every time a metahuman was seen, they would kill 1,000 people, and then 5,000 more when one tried to fight back. A lot of heroes decided to step back from the hero game, but not the Super 7. Wally was one of the few superheroes who dared to continue to fight, but unfortunately for him, his legs were broken and nearly destroyed completely during a riot, leaving him unable to run, which is, kind of his whole thing. Embarrassed and inconsolable, Wally moved to Seattle and took up the new identity of Jay Allen. However, it didn't take long for the Super 7 to find him and convince him to rejoin the fight. Wally is initially reluctant because he can't run anymore, and he reveals that he actually destroyed his own Flash suit, but don't worry, he still wore the Kid Flash ring. Eventually he decides that joining the team once again is the right thing to do. However, it doesn't end too well for him because he winds up getting impaled by a spear while saving the Green Lantern. Check out this sad Wally West for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1994's Adventures of Superman Annual number 6. Number 9, Selah Allen. From the name alone you can probably guess it, but Selah is obviously a descendant of Barry Allen. However, she didn't have any powers. Her father was actually the wielder of the Speed Force, and that led to some pretty unfortunate events. In the year 2231, the Cold-Blooded Blue, who was the rival of her father, managed to capture all 3 of the Allen family, and he crippled Selah and killed her mother while her father was forced to watch. When her father was finally able to save Selah, he took her to the edge of the Speed Force in an attempt to heal her, as the damage done to her body was so extreme, but unfortunately it didn't work. 8 months later, her father was killed while fighting Cold-Blooded Blue, and somehow Selah managed to emerge as a physical form of the Speed Force. While her real body is technically still in the Speed Force, her conscious state exists as a manifestation projecting itself. Although she doesn't have an actual body, she has all the powers of the other members of the Flash family and took up the mantle of the Flash, just like her father and those before him. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with 1999's The Flash, Volume 2, number 146. Number 8, Velocity. Also known as Overtake, this evil clone of Jay Garrick was created by none other than the Brotherhood of Evil and Monsieur Mala and sold to Ratu Brennan, dictator of Mali, and Ratu used him to guard his chemical weapons. With all of the same powers of the Flash minus the actual connection to the Speed Force, Velocity is absolutely not someone you want to go toe to toe with. Not only is he fast, he is incredibly sharp and able to think quickly on his feet, as he has shown that he adapts his fighting style based on the type of opponent he's fighting, and when he's up against teams, he quickly pinpoints the strongest member and takes them out first. He is first unleashed on the Outsiders when they're discovered by Brennan. The Speedster comes close to defeating the team when Metamorpho attacks him with acid and manages to overpower him. He's later taken by Green Lantern, who states that the Outsiders cannot be trusted. Give this evil clone story a read for yourself, starting with 2006 Outsiders Volume 3, number 35. Number 7, Brian Mallory. Now, if you're not familiar with the Legends of the Dead Earth storyline, it was a grim crossover event spanning across many DC titles that told stories of a possible future where the Earth itself had died long ago and its heroes were gone with it. However, the heroes still left an impression on history, and their stories and legends were passed down in various ways. Many, if not all of these legends, were spread around the universe by the Martian Manhunter himself, as this was his way of honoring the lives of his departed friends. Brian Mallory was one of the lucky few to receive powers from the Martian Manhunter, and he became the Flash of this frozen planet. Now, more specifically, the Mallory family were the receivers of the book and the gift, and it was their duty to pass it down the line to the eldest born son, Brian, as their worship of the Flash's life and the Speed Force allowed him to access the quote-unquote light, the power from which would save and sustain their people. With all the powers you would expect from a member of the Flash family, Brian used these powers to not only avenge his father's deaths, but also to save his people. Check out Brian in his one-off appearance in 1996's The Flash Annual Volume 2, number 9. Number 6. Baroness Blitzkrieg. A member of the Fourth Reich, a team of some German ideological villains, comes Baroness Blitzkrieg, a lesser-known speedster who never really used her powers for good. Alongside Shadow of War, Count Berlin, Baron Gestapo, and Captain Murder, the Fourth Reich was formed by Vandal Savage for the purpose of killing off descendants of the patriotic heroes of the Golden Age. Baroness did her share by targeting and eliminating several of Commander Steel's descendants, and after that she went on to target Stripesy's son Mike Dugan. Thankfully though, Jay Garrick stepped in before any more blood could be shed. Since she hasn't made many appearances in the comics, we're not 100% sure how fast she is or what other speedster powers she possesses, but by no means does that make her any less evil. Now it's also heavily implied that she's related to Baron Blitzkrieg, an enemy of the Golden Age team of heroes All-Star Squadron, however it's never really been confirmed or denied. Check her out in her first appearance in 2007's Justice Society of America Volume 3, number 2. Number 5. Inertia. Thaddeus Thawne II, aka Inertia, was created by Thaddeus Thawne in the 30th century as a clone of Bart Allen, aka Impulse, mixed with just a little bit of Thawne's genetic material. Now unlike Impulse, who aged at an accelerated rate, Inertia was allowed to develop normally. Growing up, he was brought up to be patient and methodical and was taught by the elder Thawne to hate the Allen family with a burning passion, which ended up happening. I don't know, maybe it's genetic or something. The plan was for Inertia to travel back in time and replace Bart Allen, which you probably guessed didn't work. Thaddeus has the ability to alter time relative to himself rather than using the Speed Force like most of the other DC Universe's speedsters out there. He can apparently use this ability to move at speeds rivaling those of even Wally West, the fastest of the Flashes, and usually faster than the speeds that even Wally can muster in most cases. Since Thaddeus isn't actually moving at super speed, the temporal nature of his speed allows him to avoid the usual problems encountered by the other Flash-type speedsters like friction, seeing and hearing at near light speeds, and more. Although he hasn't made much of a mark during his time in comics, he's still done some pretty bad things, like when he gathered a group of Bart's rogues after Bart became the Flash, who just straight up beat him to a pulp. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1999's Impulse, number 50. Number 4. Hunter Zolomon. The second Reverse Flash, who has also gone by Zoom. Hunter Zolomon was a police profiler who was paralyzed in a battle with Gorilla Grodd. When Wally West refused to go back in time and prevent that accident, Zolomon tried to use Flash's cosmic treadmill to do it himself, resulting in a terrible accident that gave him his time-altering powers that mimic super speed. He also for some reason decided that the reason Wally West wasn't willing to take those necessary risks was that he hadn't endured the type of tragedy that Barry Allen had. Zolomon proceeded on a dark path intent on killing Wally's wife, Linda Park, so that Wally could finally become the hero that he was meant to be. I briefly mentioned this before, but instead of super speed, Hunter was granted time-altering powers that mimic super speed, meaning that he doesn't have a connection to the Speed Force. Instead, he uses something called localized chronokinesis, which is essentially a version of time travel that allows him to travel at speeds that rival Wally West. Unfortunately for him though, he was depowered during the events of Final Crisis, likely preventing us from ever seeing him at his fastest. Now why not give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2001's The Flash Secret Files and Origins, number 3. Number 3. Black Racer. Otherwise known as the God of Death, the Black Racer is very similar to the Black Flash in a way because he is the physical manifestation of an aspect of death. What sets him apart from the Black Flash though is that he has one huge advantage. The Black Racer has the ability to possess a host and corrupt that person. This means that the already fast Black Racer can take hold of any of the top speedsters just like he did with Bart Allen that one time. The only thing scarier and faster than an evil Bart Allen is an evil Wally West, which the Black Racer is also fully capable of creating. Heck, even without possessing a speedster, the Black Racer has nearly caught up to the Flash on several occasions using his infamous cosmic skis that allow him to reach some ridiculous speeds. Now unlike most versions of Death, he actually serves a master, which is Darkseid, who has proved more than capable of keeping the Black Racer under his control. Check out the Black Racer in his first appearance in 2015's Justice League Volume 2, number 44. Number 2. Savitar. The self-declared God of War and enemy of the Flash, Savitar is just yet another super speedster in the Flash's rogues gallery. He was once a Cold War pilot and received his powers after his plane was struck by lightning at top speed. Discovering that he could now defeat the enemy by moving at super speed, he became obsessed with speed and named himself Savitar, which is Hindu for God of Motion, and dedicated his life to unlocking its secrets. He honed his powers and achieved abilities that no other speedster had yet mastered, like he learned how to transfer speed into objects and people, as well as how to almost instantaneously instantaneously heal his injuries. Obsessed with gaining more followers, he became the leader of a cult known as the Thunderbolt Agents and used them to his benefit. One time he even gave them the speed of some of the Earth's greatest speedsters. He then sent them to murder Wally West, Max Mercury, and XS, among others. Thankfully though, DC's top speedsters rose to the occasion and were able to apprehend Savitar and his cult as well. Considering how fast and formidable Savitar appears to be, this big baddie is fairly unused. His ability to learn from and manipulate the Speed Force in new ways suggests that his potential has hardly been touched. Check him out for yourself, starting with his very first appearance in 1995's The Flash, Volume 2, number 108. And coming in at number 1, the Reverse Flash. Now since we talked about the other Reverse Flashes, I thought we should talk about the original one, Eobard Thawne. Also known as Professor Zoom, Thawne was once the biggest Flash fanatic to ever live, even going as far as to recreate the reaction that gave Barry his powers, and having an operation done so that he could look just like Barry Allen. He really just wanted nothing more than to meet and befriend his hero. Now his killing tendency came up not long after that when he killed the cashier at the Flash Museum so he could use the holy grail of all Flash memorabilia, the cosmic treadmill, to travel back in time to meet his hero. Unfortunately there was a bit of a miscalculation and he ended up appearing several years after Allen's death. Distraught and very upset, Thawne escaped to the Flash Museum to get some answers, only to find out that he was destined to become the Flash's greatest nemesis, Zoom. And needless to say, he didn't really take that news well, and this sent him down a dark path. Capable of basically all of the things that the Flash and his Speed family can do, you know, like time travel, super speed, and electrokinesis, what really sets him apart is his ability to completely negate another's connection to the Speed Force, effectively stripping his fellow speedsters of their power and rendering them useless, honestly. Now if you're not familiar with this legendary speedster, check him out in his first appearance in 1963's The Flash, number 139.
In its 10th Future Flash. While Savitar was introduced as the Future Flash in the show, the real Future Flash is very different in the comics. When Iris and Wally get into a car accident, Wally dies and Iris is paralyzed. Blaming himself for not being there, Barry ends up becoming a much darker hero. He kills Reverse Flash, Mirror Master, and Grodd before turning his attention on the past. The Speed Force has a tear in it, and Barry kills his younger self and uses the energy to seal it. Good Barry then ends up waking up in the Savage World, a place outside of time, and uses his intelligence to return to the normal world, and fights against his future self once again. The two then team up against a different villain who wants to use the Speed Force to destroy the world, and older Barry creates an explosion large enough to kill the villain, which was technically himself. Well, I guess to kill the villain they were fighting as well as himself. A version of himself, the good version though, did end up surviving this, which is pretty nuts. And at 9, Elseworlds. The Elseworlds crossover event for the CW Arrowverse shows was certainly an interesting plot point for various characters. I mean, we saw Oliver Queen become the Flash and Barry Allen become the Green Arrow. However, it's surprising that they ended up actually living through this. That anyone survived this. Because a reality-altering book should really have caused a lot more damage than it did. I mean, they destroy the book and everything goes back to normal seemingly, but in my personal opinion, that's not how this should have worked, okay? The book, if it was really altering reality, would have made these changes permanent. And Deegan should have ended up thinking bigger than just swapping a couple people's identities and making the heroes the bad guys, then making yourself the Superman of an Earth without a Superman. It seems like a load of wasted potential there. Even if you don't have good intentions, I think that there's a lot more that you could have done. And if this was real, nobody would ever recover from this, physically or financially. And it ain't getting powers back. When superheroes get their powers, it's usually a one and done thing. But it's always a good plot point to somehow lose them and then need to get them back, or at least the writers think so. This has happened multiple times with the Flash over the years, most notably in the Flashpoint timeline, where Barry didn't have his speed and turned to Thomas Wayne to help get them back. Barry was strapped to a wooden chair in a rainstorm surrounded by the chemicals he was around when he got his powers the first time, and then was struck by lightning. This left him with third-degree burns all over his body, so Wayne wrapped him up like a mummy in bandages. But luckily he got his powers back and was able to deal with those burns quickly. But it's honestly a real shock that this didn't kill him, considering how he got his powers from becoming the lightning bolt that struck him in the first place, and then the Speed Force choosing him and all that crap. But nevertheless, he got them back. And while it seems obvious, like of course he would, there is another version of this story. In the Dark Multiverse Flashpoint story, Barry Allen actually dies trying to get his powers back. Instead of getting his powers back, he gets third-degree burns and dies. So Eobard Thawne ends up claiming the title of the Flash and tries to stop the war between the Amazons and the Atlanteans by killing Arthur and threatening Diana. Obviously this doesn't go well, but it was possible for Barry to die. It just resulted in the darkest timeline. And it's 7, Bloodwork. After saving Ralph from Bloodwork, or Ramsey Rosso's blood, Barry saw his mother, who was really the Speed Force, at least on the show. She came to warn him that when he had saved Ralph's life through a blood transfusion, a small amount of Ramsey's blood was transferred into Barry, and now that blood was trying to bind Barry to Ramsey's will. Barry then found himself struggling between choosing the Speed Force or Ramsey trying to convince him that if he joins him, he will actually end up surviving Crisis and can have the life he always wanted, with Nora as his child and with Iris. The Speed Force was trying to convince him to not listen to Ramsey. Barry eventually seems to reject Ramsey, claiming that his lies were so convincing. However, the Speed Force told him that Ramsey wasn't lying. This causes Barry to get angry at the Speed Force, since he never had any choice of becoming the Flash. It had chosen him, and ever since then he's been doing what the Speed Force wants. Then Barry wakes up at Star Labs, after Cisco and Frost found him lying on his apartment floor in pain. They determined that Ramsey's blood had found its way inside him, but now Barry claims to have beaten it. However, Iris noticed that Barry is acting strangely, and she quietly walks away and tells Cisco and Frost that it's not Barry. They walk slowly up to him and he turns around, now having a twisted face due to Ramsey's infection. He speeds away with Black Lightning and joins Ramsey, but later on it's revealed that he was double-crossing Ramsey. But realistically, he shouldn't have been able to, but oh well. Paragon of love, right? And it's 6, Blackest Night. Blackest Night involves Necron, a personified force of death who reanimates deceased superheroes and seeks to eliminate all life and emotion from the universe. Because, you know, that's every villain's goal. Jeff Johns has identified the series' central theme as emotion, and the crossover was published for 8 months as a limited series in both the Green Lantern and the Green Lantern core comic titles. However, the most befuddling thing was that all the heroes and villains who were raised from the dead somehow lost, despite their Black Lantern rings. Reverse Flash even ended up being brought back and fought against the Flash. During Blackest Night, Thawne's corpse returned as a member of the Black Lantern Corps, resurrected by his power ring. This version called himself the New Black Flash and immediately sought out the Flash and began tormenting him to feed on his emotions. This version was only the reanimated corpse of Zoom though, well, for lack of a better term, and did not have any memories from after his own death. It was not aware that an alternate version of Zoom had since appeared or that Flash had died and come back. Halfway through into number 5, CW Flashpoint. The CW Flashpoint is nothing like the Flashpoint we saw in the comics, aside from his mother being alive. This time around, Barry still has his speed, he just hasn't used it to become the Flash. Instead, he uses it to be creepy and steal something out of Iris's purse so that he can say she dropped it. This timeline gave Wally speed and made him Kid Flash, along with Edward Claris becoming the rival. But the main issue of this episode was going to be that Barry was losing his memories of the original timeline and, subsequently, his speed. As for how this wasn't instant, I don't know, but at the rate that it was going in the show, I'm surprised that Barry was able to release Thawne in time for him to reset the timeline. If Thawne hadn't have been captured, or Barry had just let his timeline set, in theory there would have been no Thawne. Since Barry was never the Flash, Thawne would never have to become his greatest enemy. So technically, if Barry reset the timeline, nobody would have known and Barry's life would have been perfect, exactly what he wanted. I'm surprised that Barry didn't realize this and he just kind of let things go back to the way they were. I'm also surprised he didn't lose all his memories because he definitely should have. And at 4, the end of time. Last time I mentioned how Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning, thus destroying Black Flash, which didn't matter for long since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline, unknowingly becoming the new Black Flash, until Zoom took over the title after his corpse was raised in Blackest Night. But if you think about it, how did any of this actually start? Like, how does one run to the end of time and somehow survive it? Like, if death has no meaning, is that because nothing is alive in order to die? Because if Wally was at the end of time, seemingly that would give death a meaning, right? Or does being at the end of time make you like immortal? I'm unaware of the rules here. Because in my head, if he was at the end of time, there's no way he should have survived that. Like, how did he beat Black Flash? I mean, I know and I mentioned the whole Black Flash thing last time, but specifically this time, how did he get to the end of time? How does time end? Great, now I'm in an existential spiral. Getting close to the end in number 3, Dominators. Dominators are a race of extraterrestrial beings from Swan Moon. They are conquerors intent on maintaining the status quo in the universe by any means necessary, and with the unpredictable metahumans being their prime targets on Earth, and the primary antagonists of the Invasion crossover event on the CW. 65 years after an incident in 1951, with the appearance of metahumans, especially Barry Allen, the Dominators returned to Earth, prefaced with a warning to earthly authorities that they meant no harm, though were in fact planning a war. 4 ships crash landed, and one of them was in Central City, spilling forth with Dominators. As they headed down towards Earth, the mothership followed them. At this time, the Dominators were also about finished with their super weapon that they had intended to use to wipe out all metahumans on Earth. They threatened to drop it unless Barry Allen had surrendered himself within 24 hours, which he refused, after everyone convinced him not to. The reason they wanted Barry, though, was because of his power and the creation of Flashpoint. Jackson Professor Stein, also known as Firestorm, did end up transmuting the bomb meant to kill all metahumans into water, but I'm surprised that any metahumans came out of this one intact. How can you touch a bomb that is meant to destroy? I don't know. If it's poisonous to metahumans, I don't know how he was able to touch it. Penultimately, in at number 2, nuclear bomb. Barry, Vibe, Killer Frost, and Jesse Quick headed over to an Argus facility where a woman by the name of Veronica Dale intended to blow up Central City with a nuclear bomb. They ended up defeating her and her men, but failed to stop the detonation. Barry used this new ability where time is seemingly frozen around him completely after he realized that it was too late. Then he pointed out to Jesse, who was also moving in flash time with him, that moving the bomb somewhere else would only speed up the reaction, and the idea of traveling back in time is not a choice after all the problems Barry had caused by creating Flashpoint, because you know the whole Dominators thing too. They agreed that they couldn't stop the bomb, but that they also weren't enough to take everyone out of Central City. Barry then had the idea of calling Jay Garrick for help and sent Jesse to Earth 3 to get him. Everything they tried though failed, sending it to a dead Earth, freezing it, nothing. So Barry ended up trying to say goodbye to Iris, who instead told him to use the quark sphere that they had used to trick the Speed Force into thinking that he was still in there to fuse the atoms back together and prevent the detonation, which ended up working. This whole episode takes place within 5 seconds of real time and is probably the fastest Barry has ever moved, but it's still surprising how they managed to stop a nuclear bomb. It shouldn't have happened, I'm sorry. It's a good episode though. And finally, in number 1, Damian Wayne. Did you know that Damian Wayne has killed Wally West before? Well, in the past. As in, his present version traveled to the past to stop his heart. Essentially, this is all because of some time travel shenanigans. The Teen Titans and the Titans needed to stop a Speed Force empowered Deathstroke. To stop him, they needed to stop Wally from doing stuff in the future. So, Damian's first thought was, for some reason, to stop past Wally's heart for a couple seconds, long enough to alter the timeline, but not long enough to kill future Wally. This had the unintended consequence of giving past Wally a pacemaker, which ended up affecting the future Wally, who also now had to have this pacemaker, with Damian saying, quote, "The stone palm technique causes commotio cordis, a disruption of heart rhythm. He only has to die for a few seconds, long enough to disrupt the history of the Flash," so that basically Deathstroke wouldn't end up getting his speed. I don't know how that would work, especially if they brought him back after just a few seconds, but okay. This more or less screwed up his history and his heart, even though his heart started again. And this occurred within the pages of Teen Titans: The Lazarus Contract, but it still shouldn't have happened. In at 10, Flashpoint, the classic one. Flashpoint is a timeline of Barry's own creation where his mother doesn't die and thus he doesn't become the Flash. Don't forget the fact that Aquaman and Wonder Woman have now gone to war, and at the very least in the animated movie of this storyline resulted in them destroying the world. Literally destroying the planet. Barry had to run back in time to stop himself from saving his mother, letting her die so that the planet can live. But in this case, Flash literally outruns the destruction of a planet by letting his mom die, but he also had to do it. I also don't know if I would have the strength to do that. So I think it's pretty ridiculous that Barry, in emotional turmoil, outran the destruction of a world to then sacrifice his mother. Okay, both physically and emotionally surviving that is pretty damn impressive, in my opinion. He should have either exploded with the rest of the world or not have been strong enough to sacrifice his mother. But again, this event caused so much change as well that it created a whole new continuity. Flashpoint is the jumping off point for all of the new 52. Barry literally changed DC's publishing. In at 9, Blackest Night. The prophecy of the Blackest Night foretold the impending assault by Necron, the Lord of the Unliving, who planned to unleash the power of the Black Lantern Corps upon the universe. In the main DC universe, the heroes successfully thwarted Necron's invasion. However, in the altered timeline of Flashpoint, the absence of key heroes, particularly Hal Jordan without his Green Lantern ring, left the universe vulnerable. Flashpoint, Abin Sur Green Lantern #1 delves into this world, revealing that Necron and his Black Lantern Lanterns continued their merciless rampage, decimating entire populations across more than 200 sectors of space. The consequences of Barry's decision to travel back in time extended beyond endangering his world. The absence of crucial heroes and their heroic deeds in the Flashpoint timeline had far-reaching repercussions. Plus, the entire universe was at risk, not even just his Earth. Barry's actions unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that allowed Necron's reign of death and destruction to just persist unchecked. The absence of Hal Jordan, among others, just left a void for the Black Lanterns to fill. In at 8, the Arrowverse. After the creation and the reset of the Flashpoint timeline in Season 3 of The Flash, there was some serious tension between Cisco Ramon, aka Vibe, and Barry. The reason for this is slowly revealed because in this timeline, Cisco's brother Dante was killed in a car crash when this event never occurred in the original. Dante's death affected Cisco greatly to the point where he would frequently ask Barry to change the timeline and travel back to save his brother from death, but Barry would always refuse, driving a wedge in the relationship. At some point after this, Cisco began to attend regular therapy to express his grief, but when Barry realized what was going on, he explained how he went back and saved his mother, but tried to reset things, but things didn't go quite back to the way they were supposed to, which angered Cisco even more, because Barry had saved a member of his family, but refused to do it for him. They eventually made up, but Cisco hated Barry for a good chunk of the season, with him only accepting him when Barry was going to sacrifice himself to the Dominators. In its 7, Zero Hour. Zero Hour is a crossover event that unfolded in 1994, aimed to address the abundance of potential futures and alternate timelines, much like Crisis on Infinite Earths had tackled alternate realities. The central narrative revolved around the time stream's destruction caused by Parallax, who at the time was known as Hal Jordan, who sought to reshape the universe and correct what he deemed to be flawed. Amidst the chaos, another supervillain named Extent exploited this situation, attempting to reshape the world according to his own desires, because of course. Standing against them was Wave Rider of the Linear Men, leading the charge into battle. The conflict resulted in a complete reset known as the Big Bang, effectively rebooting the DC universe again with subtle variations. This event presented an opportunity to address continuity inconsistencies, rectify problematic plot elements, and mend fractured pieces of history that no longer really worked together. Zero Hour served as a means to bring clarity to the DC universe, but it was still Barry's fault that all of that happened. In its 6, Future Flash. While Savitar was introduced as the Future Flash in the show, the real Future Flash is very different when it comes to the comics. You see, in the future, when Iris and Wally get into a car accident, Wally dies and Iris is paralyzed. So, blaming himself for not being there because he can literally run faster than teleportation, Barry ends up getting bitter and pulling his punches. He kills Reverse Flash, Mirror Master, and Grodd, and then somehow this gives him enough speed to run back in time. The Speed Force had a tear in it, and Barry wants to kill his younger self and use that energy to seal it. Good Barry wakes up in a savage world that's outside of place and time, but he gets back to the normal world and fights his future self again. Then the two team up against a different villain who wants to use the Speed Force to destroy the world, and an older Barry creates an explosion large enough to kill the villain, but then also kills his younger self, to which he ends up surviving after, which is weird, but then also that older Barry takes over his dead version's life, which is crazier. Halfway through into number 5, Reverse Flashpoint. The Flash Armageddon was the opening 5-part crossover in season 8 of the show. However, in episode 4, spoiler alert I guess, it's revealed that Eobard Thawne, who looks like Wells again but is using his real name, created his own version of Flashpoint, where thanks to the new negative still force, instead of saving Barry's mother, he kills Barry as a child, as he set out to do originally, or I guess Will set out to do, time travel. Anyway, he kills Barry as a kid and then he takes his place at CCPD the night the accelerator exploded, resulting in him becoming the Flash, but actually the Flash and not a fake one. And as this episode takes place, he's one night away from marrying Iris West. Yeah. So basically Thawne changed the timeline so that he was actually the Flash, okay? No limitation, no fake outs, he was truly the Flash, and Barry was the Reverse Flash. Flash, even being connected to the negative Speed Force and having the classic red lightning and a yellow suit. As Damien Dark said, that is an evil work of art. In it for Elseworlds. The Elseworlds crossover event for the CW Arrowverse show was certainly an interesting point for various characters, and honestly one of my favorite crossovers. We saw Oliver Queen become the Flash, Barry Allen became the Green Arrow. However, surprising that anyone ended up living through this, okay? Like, nobody should have survived, because a reality altering book should have caused a lot more damage than it did, okay? I mean, they destroy the book and everything goes back to normal, but in my opinion, that's not how it really should have worked. If the book really was altering reality, the changes should have been permanent when the book was destroyed, and Deegan should have been thinking bigger than just swapping a couple people's identities, okay? Making the heroes the bad guys and then yourself Superman on an Earth without a Superman. But the reason Barry ruined this timeline was because he was meant to die, running around the world to slow time so that they could stop Deegan, but since it was Barry, Oliver Queen traded his life to keep Barry alive. Getting close to the end in number 3, Flash War. Following Wally West's comeback during DC Rebirth, he discovered that his children from the previous universe had been erased from existence. Vulnerable and desperate, he fell prey to the manipulations of Hunter Zolomon, also known as Zoom, leading to a conflict known as the Flash War. This clash culminated in a drastic race between Barry and Wally, resulting in the shattering of the Force Barrier, which was precisely Zoom's plan. The consequences of this catastrophic event rippled throughout the DC universe, and the disruption of the Force Barrier unleashed powerful elemental forces like the Still Force and the Strength Force, adding to the already strained stability of their universe. The sudden emergence and uncontrolled release of these forces created just more chaos and uncertainty, and just the challenges faced by the heroes and the entire reality was just nuts. But ultimately, in at number 2, Flash Forward. After enduring a devastating experience at Sanctuary during the Heroes in Crisis event, which explored his mental well-being following his loss of pre-Flashpoint family, Wally West was given an opportunity for redemption to aid in saving the multiverse in Flash Forward. Teaming up with Tempest, Wally embarked on a mission to restore balance between the dark and light multiverses, combating the encroaching darkness emanating from an unknown origin. During this quest, Wally had a shocking revelation. He discovered that the cause of the multiverse's disturbance stemmed from a reality that he had inadvertently created in a desperate attempt to bring back his lost children. This constantly shifting reality was the root of the imbalance, threatening the stability of just existence itself. So, driven by a love for his children, Wally managed to rescue them and rectify the damage that he had unintentionally caused, but in doing so, he placed the entire multiverse in jeopardy. Wally's intentions were noble, but like, damn, dude, you almost doomed reality. And finally, in at number 1, Dark Multiverse. The original Flashpoint story sees Barry save his mother and create a whole new world where he isn't the Flash, like I explained earlier. However, in the Dark Multiverse version of the story, Barry doesn't get his speed back. Instead, he dies when he and Thomas Wayne attempt to restore his power. So, the vacuum left by the Flash is filled by none other than Eobard Thawne, who claims to be the Flash and proceeds to try and end the war between the Amazons and Atlanteans by threatening people and killing, which absolutely obviously works out in his favor and he becomes a hero. Just kidding. Instead, this causes them to team up to destroy America. So, as a way to stop this, Thawne runs back in time and creates his own version of this timeline, crafting it perfectly to his whims, something the Flash show, again, would kind of adapt in Reverse Flashpoint. In this comic, though, he prevents the Flash from ever being created, he saves Bruce Wayne as well as Martha and Thomas Wayne, resulting in there being no Batman, and ends up converting every superhero to his purpose, resulting in Thawne having a whole Justice League at his disposal. Plus, he prevented Batman from being made, which is the best decision that any villain has ever made in this universe, because Batman's never going to be on your side.